What's up guys, it's Peter from the Almost Painted channel. Welcome to the fourth part of the series where I show you how I built ultimate boarding action spaceship. Today there is a lot to talk about because I've printed all the parts for inside walls and floors. But firstly, let's go back to the point where I finished the last episode. Last time I presented you the idea for the 3D printed wall inserts, and I've printed copies for the whole lower deck, which you can see right now. Back then I was quite satisfied with them and I moved on to the upper deck's walls. I wanted the upper deck to look a little bit more stylish than the lower one, so I designed an insert that is more complex and elegant with those arches and just more detail. When it was printed, I decided that the ones on the lower deck are just too crude in comparison, and I decided to redesign them so that they look more comparable in terms of detail and design language. So there we have the first iteration of the wall alongside final inserts for upper and lower deck. I started with an outline of original boarding action walls, but it looked just too basic, so I decided to add more details in the form of ventilation grills at the bottom and also round ones at the top of the wall. I also varied the depths of the details because that way it looks more realistic. Then I designed even a second variant with a large ventilator. Round border is exactly the same size and height as Prometheum pipes, so I can attach them if I want to. I wanted to differentiate walls on the second deck, so I went with some arches. This time I took inspiration more from Zone Mortalis walls, but I did it in my own way. Upper deck will be the main deck of the ship, so I wanted it to be more representative, and I say the arches do the job. With the lower deck's walls being done, I moved on to the floor design, and I did this tile, which is exactly as wide as one section of the wall. So on the whole lower deck there are 36 tiles, but not to be boring and repetitive, I designed some different variants. So for example, there is this one with large vent in the middle, which also serves as a place for objective marker. And there is also the one with this small vent with some crate. And I had also to design different tiles for the sides next to the walls because they had to be narrower and also smaller for the corners. Okay, so the lower deck is ready, and before I moved on to the upper deck, before placing anything on it, I also added the walls at the front end and at the back of the upper deck, because I needed them to know exactly how much space I have and where to put everything. So I also left some empty space in the front between those walls, because there will be some space for some kind of balustrades or solid walls, but I leave it for later. And in the back I just had to add a solid wall that is dividing upper deck from the engine room. And as you can see, I did this with foam core board, so that not everything is 3D printed, and now we can have a quick DIY section. Okay, so after the walls on both sides of the upper deck were done, I printed and placed the walls that I have shown you previously. So that was it. And then I started designing the floor. And this time I went with a completely different tile design because I want those both floors, those both decks to look quite distinctively. So that was the idea. But as it is also a main deck of a Dark Angel spaceship, I also wanted to do some special tiles with their chapter symbol. So this is what I came up with. So maybe let's have a closer look at it. Okay, so let's start with the tile that is a template for the whole deck. Just like the walls, I wanted the floor to have different pattern, and I like the way it turned out. Again, I had to do modifications for the wall sides and corners of this level, so there we have them. And to make the floor pattern more interesting, I came up with this tile. The idea is that there will be 2 rows of these tiles going through the middle of the whole deck, from the stairs right to the engine room, forming 2 stripes in the middle. And as the cherry on the cake, I designed a tile with Dark Angel's chapter symbol. I printed it in 2 colors, white on top of blue, just to show you how nice it will look once it's painted. And in terms of design, I want to mention that it took some time to make models for all the parts, and production alone took a whole week of 3D printing around the clock. As an example, I want to show a tile which covers the screws that stick out above the board. I started with cutting 2 holes in the original tile, then I sketched rings that go around them and extruded them so that they protrude above the tile surface, in order to cover the screws. To make it fit in with the rest, I added some cutouts that make it look like some drain grates or manholes. I sent the file to the printer, and during the printing, I realized that I had forgotten to turn on the supports for the vent covers. So they collapsed, and this is how it looked after the printing. Thankfully, it was easy to correct because I could just cut it out and print just the cover plates during the next print and glue them with super glue. I just wanted to show you the process of designing and how many little errors you make and have to fix them in one or the other way. And this is how the tiles look covering the screws on the board. And now it's time to put all the tiles on the upper deck. Okay, so now with the floor on the upper deck being placed, I think it's starting to look really spectacular, and I guess you can now see the scale of this project, because by the way, you can play a Kill Team game on the upper section alone, and we will play definitely some games of new edition of Kill Team, so stay tuned for that. But going back to this board, I have to point my 2 favorite parts on this deck. There are definitely Dark Angel symbols, and also this 2 rows of tiles in the middle, which just look great. And with upper deck being done, now let's take a closer look at the last part, at the engine room. With this part of the board, I took a different approach for the floor. I split it into only 4 pieces because it's much smaller area than the other spaces. And I wanted to show the affiliation with Adeptus Mechanicus. So I placed its symbol spread across the whole floor with added grid around it. Moving to the walls, I did 2 variants. One with Dark Angel's chapter symbol, and the other with a pattern that connects well with engine pieces from one of the boarding action sets. I intended the walls to look more bulky to represent the industrial character of an engine room. So far it's my favorite part of the board, and this is how it looks in its place. Okay guys, so that is everything I have prepared for today. To be honest, I cannot decide which part of the ship I like the most, so tell me in the comments whether you like lower or upper deck or engine room the best, and maybe you have some suggestions. And before I finish this episode, I think it's perfect opportunity to place boarding action steering to remind you how it will look when it's finished. So give me a second and I will just place all the terrain and just see you in a moment. Okay guys, there you have it, the whole board with boarding action steering. I think it looks amazing, and the best thing about it is that you have pretty much endless possibilities how you place the terrain. So for each and every game the board will look different, and I hope it will be just entertaining to watch many battle reports on our channel using this board, both for boarding actions and also for the new edition of Kill Team. When it comes to the whole project, now that I have everything printed, so the floors and the walls, before I will glue them to the board, I want to spray it, because I came up with an idea that will make it much more easier. So firstly I will paint it and then glue everything, and this will be the topic of the next episode, so stay tuned. By the way, I will try to post some regular updates on Instagram, so you can also click the link in the description below and just follow us on Instagram. Okay, so that is basically everything for today. I hope you like it as much as I loved preparing everything for this episode. Write me in the comments what do you think about it now, and I appreciate every single comment, and it was so nice to read them after the last episode. So that's it guys, stay tuned for the next parts of this board preparation, and see you next time. Bye bye.